I wonder, Mr. Kurosawa, if you're aware of how much you must be in America with the honors you received at the Japan Society and so on. I'll try to abbreviate my questions. Is Mr. Kurosawa aware of how he is revered as a god, a genius, and an idol by not only student filmmakers but American film directors?
黒沢さんは前からご存知でしたか？アメリカでファンが多くて、黒沢さんの影響を受けてる人も多いっていうこと。
そうですね。だいぶ前から聞いてますけど、そういう話は。
I had heard something about it.
I wouldn't have blamed him if he just said hi.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Choose a side in the Clone Wars. Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan. And in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to the very first episode in Samurai Month. And we are here, myself and the Ragin Ronin that is Andy Knowles, Angry Andy Knowles of Angry Andy Reviews. And we are here to talk some samurai stuff. Hardcore, we're going in deep, we're going old, we're going classic, we're going Kurosawa. And we're going to compare Throne of Blood from 1957 against Kurosawa's other film, Ran, from 1985. Welcome back, Andy. Are you looking forward to discussing these two films?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on again. Absolute pleasure to be here. As always, I'm very, very pleased that we are talking about like two of the most well-renowned Kurosawa films.
I think this is going to be quite similar to our discussion from Western Month. Yeah, when we talked about Django, the original Django, and The Great Silence.
Yes, what a blast that was as well.
What an amazing film. I had a school friend got back to me after listening to that recently and said, I really want to watch The Great Silence now. And I said, do it immediately. Put your children to bed and get that film watched. Turn off all the
children to bed.
Put your children to bed, turn off all your other media devices, and just focus on that wonderful, wonderful Italian Western film.
Yeah, I need to purchase a 4K version of that at the nearest opportunity. If they do like a full-blown collector's edition or something, that'll be an immediate purchase.
I think they have released a Django recently, giving away the ending of that episode anyway.
Yeah, well, there we go. But it's the same with these as well. I think with these two films, obviously, we'll talk about them in great detail, but both of them, I think, at the earliest opportunity, I did check. I don't think there are any 4K releases for these, but as soon as they do them, which I'm sure they will, maybe through like Arrow or something like that, as soon as they do, I'll be on them immediately.
Jump on those, and I would agree. These are two excellent films. I know we do have to choose a winner. We do have to choose the winner of this Clone Wars within Samurai Month, but I would highly recommend them to anybody. They are classics, utter classics, but they're both kind of epics as well. Yeah. And I think Ran you would probably need to do maybe in two sittings.
Yeah, that's more of a sprawling epic, similar to like some of the old-fashioned sword and sandals things like Ben-Hur and things like that. It's sprawling, it's long. It's like Lawrence of Arabia of samurai movies.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think I did have to. I think I did 3 sittings in total. I think I've been a bit distracted this week and stuff. Got a lot of stuff going on. But
I paused it after the hour mark, about an hour and 10, and we would talk about that specific point, I'm sure. And I paused it then because I was like, this is heavy already. And I don't think I prepared myself for it.
These are very bleak films, both of them, I think. Probably Ran more so than Throne of Blood.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to go over the reasons for comparison, as I always do. So both films are directed by Akira Kurosawa, who's very famous for his samurai films, including Yojimbo, Seven Samurai, and several others. These are both set in feudal Japan around the time of the samurai. Both are loose. I do say loose because they're not exactly. It's very strict in the adaptation of these Shakespeare tragedies, for better or for worse, however you view that. And both films were made for Toho Studios, same studio that made Godzilla. Now, like we said, there is quite a lot of time between these two films.
Yeah, it's a good 30 years, isn't it?
30 years, and we are going to try and judge them as they are and against each other. But you do have to remember that Ran is in color. Ran had a higher budget, a much larger budget than Throne of Blood. And also, like, the amount of time that's passed, he's learned to be a better director. He's got more experienced over time.
And he's gone through some really horrible things, some really tough times in the build-up to Ran as well.
We will certainly get into that, no doubt. But yeah, so they are loose adaptations. So there's certain characters and plot points and arcs that have the characters either removed or transformed or reframed. Often the gender of the character can change, and the storylines may be excised or included. Depends. So if you're looking for a straight adaptation of Macbeth, which Throne of Blood is based on, or Ran, which is based on King Lear, these probably are not the films for you. I would go and seek out more kind of stricter and more authentic representations of Shakespeare and what have you. However, I still think they are very good adaptations of those said plays.
I agree. I think they do take a lot of liberties with the source material. Like you said, there's a lot of things that are cut out or removed or altered altogether. But they're not done in sort of like a malicious way. They are done basically for the good of the film, and you can tell
it's definitely not to the detriment of the film. They're still
you can tell that Kurosawa is so influenced, and it loves, both of them, Macbeth and King Lear. I mean, Ran, he says that he didn't realize the connection between the real life character that he was basically filming and created and King Lear until he basically started filming. But then he sort of infused as much as he could from King Lear just to add it and give that extra flavor. So you can tell there's a lot of love and, appreciation of Shakespeare's material and whatever. So it's not like, it's a terrible adaptation, don't watch it. Like, spoiler alert, I actually think Throne of Blood is the best Macbeth adaptation I've ever seen. I've seen a lot, and I've been in Macbeth as well.
I was going to say, we both starred in Macbeth. We both done shows to high school.
We were actors.
When we were actors, we both performed in front of children when they were studying Macbeth. To help them with their studies. What characters did you play? I played.
Oh God, I played that many. I can't even remember. But I played Banquo and things like that. And
I was Banquo and Macduff.
Doing all the blood and gore, and you get a lot of appreciation for that material. And it's overdone to hell. That's the thing with Macbeth. It's so overdone, but it fits. And that's one thing as well to discuss with, is that the feudal Japan aesthetic really does fit very well with the medieval Scotland and medieval England as well. It's amazing how well it transposes across, but we're getting ahead of ourselves there a bit.
Absolutely. So I think let's get started and let's talk about Throne of Blood from 1957. Do you want to give us kind of I know people are familiar with Macbeth, but do you want to kind of give us kind of just a rough plot of this version of Macbeth?
Yeah, I mean, the plot's not really that much different from Macbeth, really. It tells the story of a warrior who, assassinates his king, and basically all the urges of an ambitious wife, and, the fear and sort of worry that the warrior starts to develop, throughout the course of the film, based on what he's done and his own ambitions. I mean, I think this one is more straightforwardly Macbeth in terms of the way it's written, the way it's performed, even like the scene to scenes. You can actually go, oh yeah, that was in Macbeth, that was Macbeth. So in terms of the plot, I don't think there's that much different, if you like. It's hard for me to actually sort of explain it, really.
Yeah.
I did just view it as like, it's Macbeth with a few things missing.
I agree. I think it's more, there's more liberties taken with Ron and the story there. Again, I'm not as familiar with Lear, but I did look up Lear and kind of investigated a bit more and read about Lear and kind of got kind of a brief overview of it, as much as I could understand. But it's not one I've performed. It's not one I've studied. I don't think it's one I've read. I might have started it, but I don't think I finished it. But yeah, this is a lot more kind of straightforward. You have the lower class samurai warrior and Washizu, played by Toshiro Mifune, who's obviously huge Japanese actor. You know, again, very famous for being in Akira Kurosawa samurai films. He is, you know, it starts off with the battle, and the Lord, I think it's Lord Watashi, I think. He is kind of commanding his army. No, sorry, Suzuki, Lord Suzuki.
Yeah.
Just
look it up then,
there's going to be a lot of Japanese names that we're going to mispronounce, like no doubt in this podcast.
Apologies in advance.
Apologies in advance, but we'll try our best. So he's watching, he's commanding, he's on the losing side initially.
Yeah.
But then that word comes through. We don't see the battle because, again, this is limited by budget. We also don't see the Spider's Castle, which the film is named after. The Japanese title is The Spider's Castle. We don't see it because there was a limit with the budget. But and again, we don't see a lot of the battles. But again, you don't need to. Like, you know, in the Macbeth, you didn't see those battles when you saw the second.
No, yeah, they were always talked about in sort of retrospect, or, you know, the battle was taking place while the characters were frolicking or, you know, battling each other inside, away from it. That's the whole point of the story. It's the internal, you know, minute conflict between the characters, as opposed to, there's a war outside.
Yeah, the struggle.
We're all involved.
Exactly.
It's literally a political thriller set against the backdrop of a war. Except the political thriller is one man goes insane with power, as does his wife, and they manipulate each other.
And there are very similar themes in Ran as well, like the ambition, the power, the loss of power, you know, the kind of
greed of siblings,
the greed, and all that sort, and trying to get more and more and more, and then the inherent tragedy in that that comes by the end. But yeah, so we see him and Miki, which is his Banquo in the film, his best mate. They're on their way to meet because Suzuki asked them to come and meet them, and they're on the way. They get lost in the Spider's Forest, which is this fog covered. The use of fog in this film is brilliant.
It's set an ambience like nothing else. I mean, it invokes a lot of like the old classic sort of horror stories and horror films. You know, just the deep, decadent sort of forest, woodland, and you've got this wispy mist and fog just like surrounding them. It's brilliantly done.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And that's one of the things you'll see in a lot of Akira Kurosawa films is his use of the weather, and how gradually the weather gets worse and worse as you know, as the story goes on, and as the story deteriorates and gets, you know, the character's struggle gets worse and then, you know, ends quite poorly. That's how it goes. But yeah, the cinematography in both films is gorgeous. Like, probably some of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, especially Ran, is just a beautiful sight to behold. You know, even without any dialogue, you know, it's just seeing the shots alone is beautiful. But yeah, instead of three witches, we get an evil spirit.
Absolutely terrifying.
Oh, it was horrible.
I was surprised by how sort of like weirded out I was, because I mean the makeup's not great, but the makeup serves a bit of a purpose, really. It's done very, very specifically, so it's all based around no theatre, which is basically like one of the fundamental theatre practices in like Japanese theatrics. Basically, it's all based on like performance and use of makeup to create emotional states for its audience. And basically, this character, this spirit, is quintessentially that. It doesn't do much. It doesn't move or anything, but it's that really, really pale. I mean, obviously this is black and white, but the makeup is so pale, the hair is like definitely white, and he kind of seems a little bit illuminated because of what he's wearing as well. And yet he's in this really tiny, horrible hut, spinning a bloody yarn on a wheel. I was like, oh, I don't like it. It reminded me a lot of like, obviously modern Japanese horror and things, or like, long dark hair and, pale faces. And again, that's kind of an offshoot of No Theatre as well. It's like, saying everything with makeup and, quick thrusting movements and, letting that be it. And he here is just like, all he does is just repetitively spin that wheel, and it's really unsettling, and it's really, really good. It's such a brilliant alternate way to showcase the power of the spirits in Macbeth, just limiting it to one individual who doesn't really take them on, doesn't look at them, doesn't do anything apart from just tell them what is going on. It's so unsettling. It's great.
Oh, it's great. I love the vocal effects as well. Is really good. This booming, this tiny withered kind of old person, but this booming, echoing voice throughout the forest.
Yeah,
and I love the weaving of the tapestry, because it kind of reminds you, like Greek mythology. They have the three fates. They're constantly weaving his journey, his future. His future, and telling the future. And that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of all mixed in with the kind of medieval elements and the Shakespearean elements with the Japanese elements, and it all works so well. I love the moment where they kind of go and they rush the evil.
Yeah, he stands up, doesn't he? He stands up, and then he kind of just
he disappears, and they think that he's gone through like a trap door behind the hut, and then they cut down the hut. And there's nothing there.
Yeah, they cut down one wall, don't they? And they go through it, and as they're looking around in the little bit of woods, the camera sort of pans back, and the entire rest of the hut structure's gone. So it's like really, really, it's so clever, just so simple. It's the perfect ghosting, because obviously they haven't cut the scene; they've gone through it, and obviously people have come in and lifted the set out while the camera's gone through. And it's brilliant. It just creates that, it just evokes that, true horror aspect. And again, the performance from Mifune and oh god, I'm butchering the names. They're just brilliant. They're so perfect. They're that the classic, very stoic
physicality.
Samurai. The armor makes their arms point in certain ways. There's a lot of like angular movements, which again is very much No Theatre, because they are. Whenever they move with precision, accuracy, and speed. And their facial expressions, again, it's just like, all the expression, everything they're feeling and experiencing is in their face. So in this scene, when they're so confused and they're demanding answers, obviously with the Japanese language as well, it's so powerful. It's really, really powerful. Oh. For me, I think that's like the thing for both of these films. The performances, the style of performance, the makeup and coloring. Even in this black and white film, you can tell there is a coloring to it, because you get those gradients in the black and white. It's brilliant. So
good. I couldn't agree more with what you've just said. You've hit the nail on the head. Absolutely spot on. The performances, the theatrical. I love the theatricality of these films.
Yes,
they're so theatrical. It is like watching a stage play, and some people might view this and see it as kind of over the top, but it works within the setting, within the drama, within the mise en scene, to get a bit wanky. It's
that's what we're talking about, though, isn't it? I mean, literally. I mean, I'm talking about No Theatre, like I'm spewing it out every other second, but it's there, it's right there, and you can't ignore it. You can't say, oh, they're just what they're doing. They're all really over exaggerated, but that's it. That's the style of filmmaking. That's the style of characterization. They don't do it so much in Ran. There's only two actors that perform with the style of No Theatre, but in this one, it's there. It's all there. Even the wife in this, Lady Macbeth, as it is, Saji, she's just, she's very still, very measured. But then when she wants something, it's bam, she's up and she goes and does it. Brilliant. That sells the story as much as any dialogue does.
I agree. I think the physicality is very important. The facial expressions, like you said, they express everything through their facial features, and like you said, it's got intent, it's measured, it's controlled, it's wonderful. You know, and it's great. It's so good, and you don't. I will say this about this one: it is much more focused in the kind of the main characters. Mostly, it's about Suzuki, Miki, Washitsu. You know, all those are the main characters. There's not a lot of subplots. There's not a lot of side characters going on. Which
I think the cast is like the main speaking cast is like 10 or 12 people.
Yeah,
it's a very, very, very small cast.
But I think that kind of strengthens the core aspects of the film, the core storytelling. Where I think Ran has a lot more going on. There's a lot of kind of subplots and stuff. And again, they're great, but there is like, oh, we're over with these guys, and we're over. There's a lot of people. With Ran has that thing where there's so many characters in. You're like, wait, weren't they who that was, and that where are we? Yeah. Who is that guy? This guy again? They've changed clothes and now they're this. Or
if you switch off ever so slightly with Ran, you lose.
You lost.
Yeah, you lose it a little bit.
Yeah, that's why I would recommend 2 sittings for Ran at the very least, if not more. But again, still excellent, still very good. But I think because of my familiarity with Macbeth and the core, aspects of the play, I think there's a bit more of a through line. There's a bit more of a concentrated through line to this one, which is to its benefit. And again, I love the performance of Asagi. I don't know the actress's name off the top of my head.
It's Shizu Yamada.
She is probably my favourite Lady Macbeth I've ever seen.
Yeah, again, really, really unsettling, but it's so obviously historically accurate to the portrayal of a Japanese woman, the wife of a warrior, samurai warrior. It's very, very still, very, very calm. She almost seems very minute as well until she gets up. I just love it. The first time you see her stand up is when it's the scene when Macbeth is questioning everything that he's about to do and what he's been told. And she gets up and she's like, no, you will do this. You will do it. You will do it, and I will help you do it. And that's the first time you see her so
yeah. Like you were saying about the evil spirit, they only move when it's required. They hold that strength, they hold that power, but then when they are going to do something, they are going to do it. They are resolute in what they are going to do, whether that is to kill Lord Suzuki, whether that's to disappear, what have you.
Yeah,
that all the characters have that within Throne of Blood, and that makes it that much kind of stronger for it. Part of me does wish we got a bit more with Miki, with the Banquo character.
Yeah, because it happens a bit too soon. I think, again, I think I missed it. I think I was writing a note down about it, and I looked up and I was like, what's happened? I was like, is he gone?
Yeah,
I completely missed it.
Because you have the discussion with his son. In the play, the son is much younger, but in this, he's kind of like a late teens, early 20s kind of guy.
Yeah, he's on the cusp of becoming a warrior himself, isn't he?
Yeah, and they're discussing with it, and obviously Washitsu knows from the prediction that Miki's son will take his place as the new lord. And so he goes, well, you can be my heir because I've not had any children. And then Asagi gets pregnant, so then he questions that. And then they're trying to leave. Miki and his son are trying to leave because he's like, right, we've got to, we shouldn't really be here. And the horse is going mental. The horse is running around. It's almost like the horse senses the evil or the presence of evil and is like, nah, this is not for me, mate. Just running around. And I love all the guys trying to calm it down and stuff.
There's loads of them. They're like, just grab the reins.
Grab the reins of that horse. But I quite like the kind of the smaller side characters in it, like the ones that are discussing the madness and the darkness that's approaching and things.
Yeah, the ones that are basically sat on the peripheries, but they can see and sense things just as much as anyone.
Yeah, they can. It's all obvious. It's all very obvious from the get go. What's happened? What's occurring? The scene where I think it's later in the film where they're like, well, things are going to shit, but what we're going to do, we're going to follow our Lord.
they're under their lord. They're going to follow him to the death. Because if they don't, obviously they just betray their honor entirely. So you do get that weird sort of like thing where these poor guys, they take a lot of the weight off the dialogue from the main characters. So the main characters aren't saying anything that they don't really need to say, and it basically puts the audience in with these characters when the characters are sat there going, "So this is really bad, isn't it? What do we do anything? Oh no, we can't really, can we? Oh okay." Oh, well, we'll be dead soon.
Yeah. Oh, well, can't do much about it. Yeah, they're kind of just consigned to their fate. And it's fascinating to see that kind of play out. And like, they know that nothing good is going to come of any of this.
Yeah.
Our Lord has gone mad. He's evil. What will occur? And I like that kind of, I like when characters speak what the audience is thinking.
Yeah.
I always enjoy that. Like, I like in The Disaster Artist where Seth Rogen is going, like, why has this woman got cancer and now it's never referenced again?
Yeah.
Or has he ever had a sex scene before, because he looks like he's making love to her belly button? All those kind of things that just make me laugh out loud.
Yeah. There's a difference between exposition, which I hate in films. I really hate it when they're just laying out plot lines just to try and explain what's going on. There's a difference between that and characters expressing their own fears based on the situation. I think that works better. It's always a good marker on a film or a script where basically the characters are questioning, their own beliefs and sanity, around the situation. That's more interesting to me than going, well, if we're like, Godzilla versus Kong recently, it's just laden with pointless dialogue, which is basically just saying, if we do this, we can unlock this. And when that's unlocked, then Kong will be able to access the throne of Fuck City. And basically, he'll be able to enjoy Godzilla. And Godzilla will, oh, God, there's something else coming. Oh, well, we'll press that button and everything. It's rubbish. It's garbage. With this, you're going, I wonder what these. You feel invested with the side characters, even though they only say one line or two lines. You go, there's a deeper feeling, there's a deeper meaning here because these characters are struggling.
I agree, and they are the audience as well, because they're seeing the whole thing unfold. Just like
they're the audience, you're almost sat there with them because you go, oh yeah, he is acting a bit stupid, isn't he? God. How is nobody doing anything about this? But then it goes into like, well, it's historically like there's a show on Netflix in a minute which is talk about the age of samurais, and basically there's a similar thing where one of the warlords, is executing women, children, and old people, and his lords can't do anything because they're bound by honor. They don't like it, but they can't do anything. And it's a documentary, so it's obviously a Netflix documentary. It's a bit windy and things, but it's that idea is that they obviously don't agree with it, but they're bound by the honor, the blood oaths they swear, and that it's the way they lived. So
yeah, that's just society. I think it's the code of Bushido, I think, or Bushido code. They live by.
Like that,
I don't know the specifics of it, but I know it's kind of like you said, there's an honor system that they have to follow, and if not, they usually kind of take their own life, which we do see in Ran, especially. We see a lot of that. But yeah, I love like you said, I was a bit gutted we didn't see more from Miki, but also I was a bit gutted we didn't see the death of Miki again in the play.
That's what I meant by when I missed it. I was like, oh God, it's happened, and I thought I'd actually missed the scene where he gets killed. I was like, it happened away. Which is why I looked up and was like, oh God, the film. Have I missed like half an hour?
I really could have done again in the play. It's not scripted. I did a version where me and I as Banquo, we're riding. We've just come off a ride with my son, and we've both got motorcycle helmets, and we're both getting murdered. And then when I turn up in the following scene, in the this is when I was working with Ribcage Productions in Clitheroe, and I had to source a motorcycle helmet, like a damaged one, and then we damaged it more. So when I turned up, it looks like I'm a victim of a really nasty a motorcycle accident. So I'm sat there in the feast. I've got the audience is seeing me in a motorcycle helmet, and then when I get up
and turn around
and turn, there's half of it missing with me just bleeding. and with my exposed face, like the helmet has been broken and come off. Luckily, I didn't have to pay for that helmet. I literally called around all the motorcycle shops in Manchester, and people were like, "Why do you want a broken helmet for?" And I'm like, "I'm doing a play." And they're like, "Legally, we can't have those on the premises. You know, are you trying to catch us out?" And I'm like, "No, I just want it for a play, man. Just give me one if you've got one, or if one that you can't sell, just give it to me." And the last shop I found, I managed to do it, and I was like, do you want any money for it? And they're like, "No, just have it." And, I was like, excellent. So yeah, that was a really cool moment in that version of Macbeth that I did.
Yeah, I think a lot of modern versions now, especially the film adaptations, they do tend to show him being murdered to kind of give it a bit more credence. So that you're not just going, "Oh well, he's dead. I don't really care." They try and show sort of like fleeing essentially, and showing the brutality of it. It's one of them. I feel like sometimes you don't need to see it, and then sometimes you do. I think it's depending on the film. I think with this, it probably would have been good to actually see it, purely because you know the armor, the use of weapons. I think it would have been good to show, his qualities, if you like, to quote Captain Faramir from Lord of the Rings. What a weird reference I just did. Where did that come from? But yeah, just to show like the level of warrior skill, and that that maybe that level of betrayal as well, just to see a bit of like, "Oh, this is my lord. This is my counterpart. What was he doing?" I think it would have benefited it slightly if we'd just seen like some of the betrayal of the honor going forward.
Yeah, I agree. Still, however, the feast banquet is still very effective.
Brilliant.
We have this traditional dance that this guy's doing, but all the while
he loses his shit. "Stop dancing!"
And all the while,
the guy's like, "Oh, okay."
Because everyone's like, "Where's Miki? Where's Miki?" It's very disrespectful that he's not here, and he's constantly looking at that.
There's those two missing spaces in there, and all the other lords and the retinue, they're all sat round, and the traditional way they're all sat on those cushions, kneeling down, and he's just there. I love the costumes because it makes Mifune look, Toshiro Mifune look so muscular and huge. It's just brilliant. He's just sat there, and he's raging as well because he's worried that he's going to turn up, and all the other lords are like, "Well, where the fuck is he? What's he doing?"
Yeah, it's almost like I kind of think he's partly play acting. That he's like,
"Yeah,
I've got to look mad because he's not here, even though I've ordered him to be murdered." And then that leads to him being even more shocked when the ghost appears of Miki. And I love that. Oh God, what's her name again? Lady Macbeth. What's her name? Saji. Where she's like, "Oh, he's drunk. He's drunk."
Yeah.
What I love as well is the fact that when they're drinking I guess it's sake, in the tiny little bowls. I love when they kind of stick their whole arm out, and then bring it round to drink it. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. The little details in these films are fucking brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Just a little. I mean, again, you'd expect it, really. You'd expect it. But it adds that little extra bit of depth and quality. When you see them they're still trying to do things in the proper manner while their lord is completely losing his shit. It adds that little bit of extra flavor to it.
It's like, "Oh, he's drunk. He's drunk. He's drunk."
And they're like, okay.
And he's like, "Yes, I am very drunk, and you should be drunk too. Come on."
Yeah.
And then he freaks out again, and then they're all like, that's kind of the first kind of real indication that something is very, very wrong with him, or that something, because there's been whispers and rumors, which is kind of part of the play, but nothing's really confirmed. But then he starts kind of losing it, and they're like, "Fuck!" And again, we see a lot of that in Ran as well. Like, fucking hell, he's mental.
This scene is the key scene for going back to like the expressionistic acting and like the really like powerful. He runs to that spot, slams his feet. His face is all like the facial expressions are amazing in this scene, in the banquet scene. They're amazing because he's constantly throwing himself around this space, and because obviously the wooden flooring, everything, the set is perfect. every time he's moving, you can hear like a thunderous sort of sound every time he steps, and it just adds something else to the entire scene. It's so brilliant. Just the level of performance again. I keep gushing about the performance, but I think the performance sold the film for me, really.
Yeah, I think all the actors that have speaking roles absolutely sell every moment. There's not a stone left unturned in any of these performances. And when she's washing her hands and stuff. I love the fact that within the style of dress, that you can hear Asagi the fabric kind of shifting, like when they shuffle a lot. Again, in Ran, it's a similar thing. You can hear them slightly kind of on the floor. You can hear them move, and that's almost even that's kind of it's
yeah. I think we talked about it, didn't we? Basically, like the use of like music. There are some moments when the music is so powerful and it's really there, and then there's other times when it's just deadly silent. There's nothing. There's no music. There's sometimes not even any dialogue, and it just uses the sound of like the movement or sound of the forest and things like that, the weather, just to give you that extra sort of ambient feeling of dread, of paranoia, especially in this
tension, a lot of tension throughout. I think she was great, and again, like that kind of just some of those. There's a lot of kind of soundscape elements that I describe as kind of soundscape elements that, because the music is very intermittent in both films. It comes and goes.
Long periods of intermittent as well.
Yeah, and that's probably my only criticism, especially in Ran, is because the films are so long and there's these great, massive, beautiful opening shots, and of the forest and the greenery, and of the castle in this one as well, and the fog. It's great, but I think sometimes I'm a bit like, for me, when I'm not hearing music in a film, I feel that it starts to drag for me. There starts to be a bit of like, I need a little something to keep me going. And again, that's a choice he made. And again, it's kind of my only criticism of the work, is that sometimes I can just some more kind of more undercurrent music or something. Like I noticed this when I compared with Dennis the two Dracula movies, because back in the day, they would play live music to the film. Yeah. So when you watch the original version, there is no music. And again, I felt it then, because I was like, there is nothing to kind of push you along or guide you through the journey. And I think when music is not used in film, it's very noticeable. Like you notice the absence of music for whatever reason. Like if it's a choice, fair enough, I get it. But you will, for long stretches, you will notice it, and you're like, okay, come on. If there's not dialogue or like snappy dialogue going on or action, and again, the shots in these films are beautiful, but there are moments where I'm like, okay, come on. Yeah. But again, I think that's because of through our modern lens, we've been spoilt with stuff being like action heavy, and things are always going on, and the camera's moving every which way. There's always something to grab your attention. I think that's just the computer age, the digital age, and the world we live in now, in comparison to the films that we're making back then, and the style of filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can appreciate that. For me, I think it is very much scene dependent. I can live without music so long as the tension's being created effectively. And with these films, there's a few moments in Ran where I'm like, okay, it's a bit too much. But in this one, I think in Throne of Blood, I think like the lack of music, especially in the banquet scene, I think you don't need it. I don't think you need it, purely because everything you need is being created by every other factor in the sequence. The use of language, like the performances, the set, the general sound, like you said, the shuffling and everything, and the way that it ramps up, that fear, that paranoia, and even like just the randomness of the way the ghost looks and things like that. I think it creates everything you need there. And other than maybe like, a couple of like maybe like a whistling, some whistling flutes, like dead, just dead quick, dead sharp, which you do get in this. You get like, kind of thing every so often. But yeah, it's for me, it's always scene dependent. There's a lot of movies I think that do just put too much music in because they know it's not, the film's not doing anything on its own benefit. So I think it's a thing you have to weigh really. Some films have music in right the way through, like really like over the top, almost bloody dubstep crap, just to try and give it something, give it some life. It's one of those things you have to sort of like, I think you look at it from each film's perspective, I think.
It reminds me, I did a podcast on And Now the Podcast Starts, which is a great little horror podcast. And we looked at like Halloween 5, and there's these two bumbling cops, which are supposedly meant to be quite funny in the film, and like a bit stupid. Yeah, the dialogue is not that snappy or funny. It's just like we're cops and we do our job and we'll take cats out of trees and shit like that. But what they did, which they didn't know at the time, the actors, or I think the director maybe didn't know about this either. They put like a clown score music like underneath them, and it's like, and every time they turn up, that same it's like their theme. But again, like the following,
like Bulk and Skull from Power Rangers.
Yes, exactly the same. Exactly the same.
Which I always fucking hated. I remember hating it when I was a kid. Like you got Power Rangers, which got that really great, the electronic fucking guitar and all this, like really electronic music, and you get and you're like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah. And every time they walk in,
it crucifies anything. It's like, oh no.
It's not all the way through. It's very, like you say, the tension in certain aspects and certain scenes is not there. But I think, like the ones we're talking about, we'll talk about the ending as well very shortly of the film. But within the banquet and within the forest with the evil spirit, like the lack of music, like you said, 100% is earned and works.
Yeah.
But again, on the odd occasion throughout, there will be a moment where I'm like, okay, we've switched, especially in Ron, where you switch characters, you're not entirely sure what the context is just yet,
Yeah, so I agree there. Some of the major location changes could have done with like just a little hint of something's changed.
Yeah,
we've changed here.
Yeah,
just little.
We've changed the scene, we've changed the characters, we've changed something. Even a small theme, not nothing like as clownish as the other stuff, but just a little something to kind of indicate the passage of time or to indicate something else. Because Ron has a lot of beautiful lush green fields, but I don't know which.
A lot of fucking red as well.
a lot of fucking red. But I don't know what particular field that is and which particular characters are in that field. You need something to kind of carry me with the story, and I just don't think it's there on certain. Again, Akira Kurosawa is a master filmmaker, and these I've actually never seen any Akira Kurosawa films before I watched these two.
And now Seven Samurai.
Not even seen Seven Samurai.
Oh, what the fuck?
I know, bad, isn't it? Bad.
Oh, Jesus.
But this has made me go, you know what? I need to fully invest in Akira Kurosawa, and I'm glad. And yeah, it's fantastic. But again, that is the only criticism I will put forward for either of these films. I think it's
legitimate. I think it's legitimate.
Yeah. So let's talk about the ending of the film, the very climactic ending, and again, one that doesn't need music. So Washizu visits the evil spirit again and is confronted by three other kind of dead samurai soldiers. And they say that the only way that Washizu will ever be defeated and will lose the lordship of his castle will be if the forest moves towards the castle. If it comes forward, much like
the classic twisting state of the play.
Yeah, because you're like, forests don't move. What a ridiculous idea.
The forest of what's it called? Oh no, Dunsinane, is it?
Dunsinane, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. The forest can't move, you fucking idiot.
I'm invincible. I will say this, like, I don't want to go too much into the kind of differences between Lear or Macbeth or anything, but one of the main differences here is they don't have a Macduff, and they don't have that aspect.
Takashi Shimura plays Noriyasu, who's kind of Macduff, but it's not really Macduff.
But it's like in respect to what I think of Macduff, like
definitely.
There's the prediction that only no man born of woman.
You don't get that. You don't get that.
That's completely excised. The final battle with Macduff is excised as well. But the final sequence is utterly incredible, and it is. I think in some ways it's probably better.
Because it's literally it showcases that he loses everything basically. So Asagi has just learned that she's obviously the child it's going to be stillborn. So basically he goes further down the spiral, if you like, as she falls into madness, and she's there cleaning her hands, trying to get rid of everything. Loads of troops arrive, don't they? And basically he tries to muster his own troops to help him, and they all completely ignore his orders. So basically, this is where the point where they've mutinied. They've accepted that their lord has gone beyond any form of redemption or sanity, and they just ignore him completely. And it's really great because you get that wonderful shot where he's on like a higher level, and he's shouting commands, and they're all just stood there completely ignoring him. It's really, really great.
But it's very, very disconcerting as well, because they're not responding, they're not moving, they're just like the ghosts we were talking about earlier, or the spirits. They're just looking at him and just like, nah, mate, not going to happen. And he's stomping, and he's being brash, he's being aggressive. He's like, you do this, you deserve me. I am your lord and master. You do what I say. And then they just turn around.
One arrow just flings right next to his head, and you go, oh shit. And then in less than 2 or 3 seconds, there's just hundreds of arrows being fired at him. And I've not seen this film. I thought I had seen it, but I think I got confused with another film similar to it, or maybe another Kurosawa film. But this ending, I was in shock. I was like, I couldn't believe like how they done it, how they filmed it. Just how they filmed it, not necessarily the actual end itself, but like they actually filmed this. How did they do it? Like, it's so effective. Just arrows piercing planks of wood next to him. He's getting shot, and all these arrows. They look real, and they fucking are real.
So I looked this up as well. So there's a little, if you Google Throne of Blood on YouTube, there's a little clip of a guy who's interviewed, who was the special effects guy, and basically. All the arrows had basically a thick needle, like a really thick needle. Now, Toshiro Mifune wore protective body armor, so he could be shot by these and not be injured. But it's real arrows. Like, all of them are real arrows. Every single arrow that is shot in that sequence is real. These archers were top of their game, top of their class.
Yeah, they got full blown professional archers, and basically the key to the scene was. When I fling my arm one way, that's the direction I'm going to run. So you shoot the other side of me. So when he moves his right arm to brush off some of the arrows that have hit the wall, and then he moves, real arrows on the wire. To be fair, they're all guided by wires, like really thin wires. They all fire straight into the wall, and those are proper arrows. The ones that hit him are the ones with the little needles that sit nicely in his thing, and they've got like bamboo, like a bamboo sort of shoot thing. So they don't hit as hard, but the other ones. My word! I mean, it creates a brilliant effect because you hear them going, and he's screaming and trying to, tell them to stop, and they just keep doing it. It's brilliant because it carries on. I thought like, he's going to get hit a couple of times and then collapse, but he still tries to keep going, and it adds that sort of like again that sort of. The idea of him thinking, I am the Tony Montana thing. I'm invincible. You can't kill me. You can't destroy me. It's fantastic.
I was going to say that because Brian De Palma was heavily inspired by this film clearly for Scarface, because he's just going, all my men are betraying me. All the guys, all my enemies have come. I mean, Scarface is Macbeth, effectively.
I mean, in an even more sort of like windier way. Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. And there's so many kind of elements here, and you can see it. But I love Scarface for what it is. It's utter 80s ridiculousness. I love it.
Yeah.
And also for Carrie as well. So at the end of Carrie, she's got the mum. They're all gonna laugh at you. They're all gonna laugh at you. You got all that, and then she throws all the kind of the sticky implements, the sharp implements, like telekinetically shoots them into her body and kind of crucifies her basically.
Yeah.
Which is clearly inspired. There's no way it's not inspired by this. Which is amazing. I'm glad that I could. When I was watching it, I was like, oh, it's a bit like this and a bit like this, and then I looked it up and I went, yeah, of course it's going to be a bit like that. But it's just phenomenal. I love it's almost a bit of a twist. It's the same story, but you kind of twisting that last little element of it.
Yeah.
I guess they've got the kind of because I don't. Is there a miscarriage in the original Macbeth? I don't think there is there? I don't.
It's heavily implied that there might have been, but it's open to interpretation, isn't it? So obviously they went with that direction here to sort of add fuel to the madness fire, if you like. I mean, I think I discussed it in sort of pre-planning when I was doing Macbeth, basically like the ideas behind it and how that factors into maybe some of the decision making, or just what happens to her. Does it have some kind of like biological effect where it basically...
Yeah, like a postpartum depression type thing or something.
Yeah, kind of. But then we had the idea of the basically like, she hasn't given birth to this stillborn, and yet it's still dead inside her, if you like, and that's what creates, the madness. Basically, like she's basically dying from the inside, legitimately dying from the inside. Again, it's one of them. It's the good thing about Shakespeare. You can look at things, and we've seen so many variations of different Shakespeare plays where they take things to town that aren't necessarily in there, but they're hinted at if you discuss it. So
I agree. I think it's time to very slowly, just before we move on to talk about Ran, I just want to bring up a couple more things. So Kurosawa actually wanted to make this a lot earlier than he did, like 7 years earlier, in fact.
Yeah.
But didn't, because Orson Welles had just released, or was in the process of releasing, his version of Macbeth. So he felt, okay, now's not the right time for that.
Yeah.
It's just going to be compared and clash. So I won't do that. You're in good stead as well, Andy, because Michael Fassbender says that this is also his favorite adaptation of Macbeth.
Yeah, I read that as well, because I was reading up on I had a look at different interpretations of Macbeth. I did have that version of Macbeth that Michael Fassbender did. I didn't really care for it that much, to be fair. But yeah, I read that he's a big fan of it, and obviously that kind of influenced his own performance, I think, in his Macbeth. Yeah, there's a lot of people that like revere this film as being, the pinnacle of. One of the pinnacle films of Kurosawa's influences on Western cinema. I mean, because he's heavily influenced by Western cinema, and the great thing is that influence has been returned. Obviously you get it with Star Wars and things like that. Like the influences have gone whole circle, which is just it's wonderful. It's wonderful, especially obviously it wasn't that far off after the Second World War, and he's just a filmmaker who loved art. He's not bound by any sort of political idealings or anything like that. It was literally just a case of I love Western cinema, and I want to be inspired by that, and hopefully they can be inspired by what I do. And it happened. It happened.
Yeah, I totally agree. Couple more things. So we were talking about all those arrows being real as well. So one of the guards, they actually played one of the guards who gets murdered.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love this trivia. I love this bit of trivia.
He was a little bit worried that Toshiro Mifune might miss the mark when he was stabbing him with the.
Yeah, so it's the guard that's guarding
Suzuki.
Yeah, it's the guard. The guards obviously the guards get poisoned with sleeping potion in the play, and the same thing happens here. And basically, as he wakes up.
as
Go on, I'll let you do it.
as he wakes up, obviously they run in going, they find him, they wake up, they're like covered in blood, and the spear and everything is in their hands, and he's like, oh, a bit discombobulated because they've been drugged. And then he's like, traitors, how dare you? And then he goes to stab him. Now the actor was a little bit worried that Mifune would miss his mark, so he put a little wooden block under his armor just in case. And indeed, Mifune did miss and did actually stab him.
Yeah, he cleaved right through the wood. This is how powerful the thrust was. Cleaved through the wood and cut the guy, and he had a scar right the way through the rest of his life.
And to be fair, that's a cool scar to have. If you can have a scar for any reason, that's pretty good.
See the scar? Got it in Throne of Blood, mate.
Got it. They stabbed me. They stabbed me for an acting role.
Yeah, but going back to sort of like that sequence is great because obviously the guy is completely like, what the fuck's going on? I've just woken up, and then he comes over, and it's the power of the thrust again. It's full body acting. It's like the whole huge lunge, straight through. Oh, it's brilliant. I'm not surprised he got stabbed, to be fair, because it's literally
and it looks real. Even the stab later when the assassin comes back and
and he stabs him through the back.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, and even that look, I'm like, oh, that does look quite real.
That made me laugh. That he's like, yeah, go on, you're free to go, and he's going, thank you, my lord. Oh God! But he's there for ages. He's like, thank you, my lord, and then just stands up dead slow. And then stabs him straight in the back.
Does he bring the head of Miki? Does he bring his head? Yeah, that's right. Which again, a similar sequence in Ran as well.
Again, it's brilliant because he stabs him and he doesn't die straight away, and you get that wonderful bit where Washizu sort of like he stands back and he's like, he's still alive. And he's there going, oh God, oh please, oh God. And he's like, oh, and he's doing that wonderful facial expression again, like just complete shock. And he still like comes forward a bit and goes, should I finish him off? No, I'm okay. He still comes back again. He's like, oh no, and then he does die. And there's that wonderful like 2 or 3 seconds where the guy's just completely dead on the floor, and he's still just stood there at the back going, have I killed him? Yeah, I've killed him.
I did question this about the films, that they're discussing these evil plots and plans and ideas and stuff, and they're like we best close these doors so no one hears us. I'm like, those walls are literally paper thin. They are literally paper thin. You could, I've seen it in films. People just jump through those bloody walls. It's just the tiny like.
Then the Simpsons do a joke in it where Homer just walks through them, doesn't he?
So I have the feeling that a lot of people probably knew what was going on, especially in this one, most definitely in Ran as well. But I just think, why even bother closing those doors? Everyone's going to hear you do what you do or say what you say. So
yeah, there's a load of occasions in Ran where they do actually close the doors, and you're like, there's no point.
There's no point. One last thing before we move on. The Akira Kurosawa did also do another Shakespearean adaptation, but it was not a samurai film. It was called The Bad Sleep Well, and it was an adaptation of Hamlet. It's kind of a film noir type thing, but it's basically very inspired by that. So I might give that one a look as well, because I would like to see his non-samurai stuff as well, because that'd be quite interesting to see.
Yeah, it'd be good. Yeah. But
yeah, Throne of Blood, excellent film. Moving on to Ran. So what do you think about Ran?
For me, I love a good sprawling epic. I really do. Like I mentioned a couple. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I don't know why. I don't know whether I had some kind of pre-watching sort of thoughts on it. Even though I hadn't seen either of these films, but I loved it. And at the same time, I was like, I just wanted a little bit more. I don't know what it is about it, but I did love it. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I didn't. I actually like this a hell of a lot, and I think it is purely to do with everything that was in Throne of Blood is dialed up. That much more. The performances are that much more. The music is that much more. The action, the color in this film is bloody exquisite, and it won an Academy Award for like costume design, purely because the coloring of all the costumes is something else. And you got these bright colors, blue, yellow, reds, all the primary colors, they're all absolutely brilliant. And you've got the sprawling green fields, which are just perfectly green and not a shred of anything wrong with them. They're all perfect. But I think my main thing is that I'm not really a big fan of King Lear. I think that is probably where I struggled in places, because I don't actually like King Lear as a play. I never have done. I did it in GCSE English, which that's not fair on the play itself. But I've never had any inclinations to watch a theatre production of it. I've watched a few films of it, and I haven't enjoyed a single one. I think it's just the source material for me that kind of knocks this down a bit. But everything else, I absolutely love about this film.
Well, I think I'm in a similar vein as you. I think I feel the same way about it. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's well acted, it's full of color, full of amazing scenes, amazing sequences. I think the script is strong. I think it's a really good script. I think the dialogue
I think like going back to what I said, I think it does a better job of adapting King Lear than any other production that I've seen. I think it. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say it is the best King Lear production. Like Florian LeBlanc, like I said, that's the best Macbeth production. I think these two are the best productions of the source materials that I've seen. It's just there's still a little things about King Lear that
that book
it dragged in the play, therefore it drags here. Even though again it takes a lot of liberties with the source material, there are things that are vastly cut, vastly altered. There's still a few moments where I was like, I just couldn't get into it. I think it is mainly towards the middle part when he's gone mad and he's being looked after by the fool and comes across somebody who he's committed an atrocity to. There's that. I was kind of like, I'm struggling here. It's still beautiful. Still looks beautiful. Performances are still incredible. But I still just struggled with it in the middle portion.
No, I think I agree with you. I think that's when my kind of concentration kind of dipped as well, or my enjoyment of the film to kind of go, okay, because and even towards the end, I was like, is this the end? Is this the end? Is this the end?
Yeah.
There's a bit of that as well, because I was like, I was interested to kind of see where it was going. It does really ramp up towards the end, and I enjoyed that, and I love the kind of battle and that sort of stuff. But there was kind of a Return the King aspect to it. I'm like, it's an epic, but do we have to have 20 different endings? Maybe not. I enjoyed it very much, like it a lot. So the plot, if you don't know King Lear or Ran, the plot for it is it's a elderly samurai lord who is bequeathing power to his three sons. Now, he uses kind of an analogy or a parable, and it's quite a famous Japanese parable from this character person, I guess, Mori Motonare. And it's a story about his three sons. And the parable goes that he gives all of his sons an arrow, and he says, break the arrow. They all break it. Then he gives them a bunch of arrows, 3 together, and says, try and break that. And obviously he's saying that combined, you are stronger together than you ever are apart. No one will ever defeat you. So I'm bequeathing my power to all of my sons. But I will retain my lordship, and my guard, my private guard, will still be mine. And for the rest of my life, I will visit your castles, as I live out my life. And all the sons are like, I love you. You are the best. You are the most sensible. You are the most intelligent. You are the greatest warrior. And he's still got some skills. Like he kills like a boar or something, I think, at the start with the bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And then kills another character later on with the bow and arrow. So he's not useless. He's not completely the makeup on Lord Hideyotora, I think he's called, is amazing. It's fantastic. It looks great. But one of the youngest son is so you've got Saburo is the youngest son, and you've also got Taro, who's the eldest. He dresses in yellow. Jiro is the second eldest or middle child. He dresses in red, and Saburo dresses in blue. Like you said, again, the primary colors are off the charts. But I liked that because it made I always knew which character it was as well.
Yeah.
Like if because there's so much stuff going on in this and so many characters, I'm glad there was that distinction between the colors and the characters, because I can go, okay, the red is the second son, the blue is the youngest son. So Saburo, he actually puts his knee to the arrows, the 3 arrows, and breaks them and says, "Father, you are wrong. You are stupid. You have been a merciless, horrible, bloodletting warlord for all of your life. And now you are expecting all of us to work together and to not have that ambition or that drive for power. You are being utterly ridiculous and senile in your old age. What are you talking about?" Hideyotora is offended by this, even though Saburo is making excellent points. He's completely right. He's completely right. Everything he's saying, Hideyotora feels he's being disrespectful. So what he does, he basically exiles Saburo, the only good son, that we know of at the moment, that we kind of know of. They're like, he's honest, and it's like King Lear with Cordelia, who says, how much do you love me? Tell me how much you love me. And she goes, well, I love you as much as I should love a father. And I go, right, piss off. That's basically the same thing.
Yeah, you're all right. Get the fuck out.
Get the fuck out. So yeah, we have that. And Saburo, along with, I think he's called Tango, they are both exiled. And Tango says he's going to dress in disguise and watch over the Lord because he still respects him and wants to look after him. And he even defends Saburo's ideas. He's like, yeah, he's probably said it in a bad way, but he is making very valid points. So then he's exiled, and you don't really see much of Saburo until the end, really. So it's much like when you're teaching and there's a naughty child in the class, you spend more time with the naughty children. Than you do with Saburo, but he does come back and has a big part to play later on. Again, still loves his father, forgives him, all that sort of stuff. So then Lord Hideyotora goes to the eldest son. There is a character in it called I think it's Kayoyami, who plays a kind of a jester fool character, which has historically there is no such character in Japanese culture or in samurai culture. It's kind of it comes from the Shakespearean play, comes from that medieval, that kind of the Elizabethan era, whenever it was set. But I think he's one of the better characters in the film, actually, and most interesting.
Yeah, the character was expanded purely for this. I mean, the fool in King Lear isn't really that big of a character. In this, he kind of is expanded to basically provide.
Is he kind of like, he's a bit like an Edgar, would you say, or?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's given the job of basically adding, thought processes to Lear when obviously he goes insane, isn't he? When he doesn't really talk that much. So, yeah. I mean, again, this is one of the parts where it confused me a bit, because I was like, okay, this guy is hanging around. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting character, an interesting thing to place within all this. But anyway, Hideyotora goes to the first castle, and the jester, the fool character, Kayoyami, is making fun of the lord of the castle, so the eldest son, which he doesn't like, and then which the soldiers don't like either, because they feel like he's being disrespectful. But the agreement is that they don't touch any of his men, any of Lord Hideyotora's men that he's kept with him. So they go to kill Kayoyami because of the disrespect, and Hideyotora fires an arrow and kills one of his son's men, which leads to him having to sign this contract, making sure that he still gets all the power and they can't stay here anymore, and to move, because the problem is the men that are staying there. They don't have a problem with the father Hideyotora staying there, but it's all the men, because they're just causing trouble. But then he gets kicked out. And then he goes to the next castle, he gets kicked out by the other son, and then he just is left to wander Japan aimlessly with no love and, barely any people. Like, he loses a lot of his men, he ends up alone.
Oh, loses? Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
they get massacred.
They get absolutely massacred, yeah.
It ramps up, doesn't it? It goes from the extreme of going, right, you have to leave because you fool, we don't like you fool. And then the next one is, we're just going to kill you.
Yeah. If you don't leave, we'll kill you, basically. Yeah. You don't deserve anything. There's a really nice scene early on with Lady Sue, who is the wife of the second son. And she basically, there's this lovely backlit sun setting, and Hideyotora goes, "I've been really bad to you. I've been awful to you your entire life," which he orders her. So he ordered her father killed, and then ordered his son and her brother to be blinded. He's a cruel, despicable guy, and all in this film, he's basically, and this is a moment where he's basically asking her for forgiveness because he feels guilty, and she's like,
that's one thing about the play is that the play compared to this film, there's like the crucial difference between the two stories is that in King Lear, it's about undeserved suffering, and it portrays Lear as, just a fool. He's even more of a fool than the actual fool is in the play. In this, the contrast is that he's been a really, really horrible man throughout his life. He's been cruel. He's executed men, women, and children, and murdered people by the thousands just to achieve his own singular goals.
Everything that happens to him in this version is well deserved. Like he gets like you said, in the play, not so much. He's kind of just a bit of an idiot.
It doesn't paint it sympathetically at all in this.
And she comes up later. She's trying to escape because she's being trying to be assassinated. Someone's trying to assassinate her. And then they meet again, and that's one of the kind of things that crystallizes in his madness. He goes, "Oh my God, that's Lady Sue. Oh my God, she's coming back for me. Oh my God, all the things I did to her. All the, and like you said, he meets the blind brother as well.
Who he blinded personally. That's what I told you. Like, he blinded that person personally. Did it himself. It's just, it adds to, like, just it's purely unsympathetic. Everything that happens to him. Bit weird.
It's an interesting kind of dichotomy because you do feel for him.
Yeah.
Yet he's done all this shit. Like it's almost like kind of, it's a bit like watching Joker and stuff. You kind of identify with the person, but you don't condone the actions. The means don't justify the end, sort of thing.
Yeah. Even Lady Carday, who basically, she's the one that basically constructs the entirety of the plot. To overthrow him and to punish the sons. Basically, she was a victim of him as well. So even she in her vast extremeness in creating this massive plot is more sympathetic than he is, and yet she is utterly terrible herself as well.
Oh, I have to say the female characters in both of the films are amazing. I didn't expect them to be as well developed or as interesting or as fascinating as they are. Like Asagi and Lady Kaide, just amazing, just wonderful bit of great depth, character, ambition, drive. They've got everything. We talk about poorly written female characters. My God, these are written so well. This is the example. They're both fairly villainous, these particular characters, but they're very well written and well performed.
Yeah,
Lady Kaide is terrifying in the whole film.
Yeah,
terrifying.
They appear subservient in every aspect of the film, but they're clearly not. They're playing the subservient role, and yet when they want to do something, that's when you see them spring into action. Yeah. Again, Lady Kaide and Hidetora, they're both examples of the no theatre in this film. The two singular examples. Everybody else plays it quite straight, naturalistic. But here, obviously, with the facial makeup of Hidetora, and then Lady Kaide, where she's very still, very measured, and yet when she wants something, she's up there and she's directly straight going for it. Amazing. Just highlights how powerful a character she is.
So the second son, Jiro kills Taro, her husband, and then she comes in very head in hands, like, I'm very sorry, will you forgive me? And then snaps, like you said, snaps into action, gets out a sword and almost kills him there and then. Yeah. And starts slitting at his throat very gently, saying, I'm just going to fucking kill you because you deserve to die. I hate the Ichimonji dynasty or whatever they call it, the family. He's like, I'm just going to fucking kill you. And she has so much power in that scene. And then and then they have sex not long after. Because I'm always very turned on when someone has a knife to my throat. So they have sex, and then she's like, "Well, you've got to marry me. I'm not going to be your concubine. Not for a fucking second will you believe. Will anyone believe that I'm your concubine? I'm in charge. I'll tell you what to do." And that's like, there's a lot of comments in the film like the male characters being led around by the female characters, and they are absolutely wearing the trousers and have all the power and all the intelligence. Like, all the men are effectively just greedy idiots, and the female characters kind of guiding them through it's their ambition more so than probably the male character's ambition. Which
they're all surprised come the end of it. I mean, we'll jump ahead just a little bit, just to that last sequence with Lady Carday, where basically they march straight in, and she's there going, "Well, I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve. What have you done?" And they're furious. They're like, "She's fucking right.
Yeah,
she's done all this without us even knowing." And the fury comes from that. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
And it's almost like Civil War, when Zemo's like, "Yeah, I've done everything I need to do. I broke up.
Fire a shot.
Didn't need to fire one shot. I've managed to do everything I planned to do, and now I've just, I'm happy with my role." And he goes to kill himself. But that soldier has a great scene earlier on, because Lady Carday comes in. She says, "I'm going to get married. We're going to get married. Jiro and Carday are going to get married." And his like first officer, they're like, "You're going to have to kill Lady Sue now. You will murder her." And he's like, Are you kidding? And you think, like, because she, like, Jiro's talking to him, and he's like, "You're an idiot. You're being led around by this woman.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?" And then she walks in, and she tells him to do it, and you believe 100% that he's going, like, she convinces him. She's like, "You will do it. I've said you will do it, and you will do it." Like, cold, calmly calculating, gets that across, and he walks off, and he's like, "I am going to do it. I'm going to do it." Like, the way he reacts, he's like, "Yeah, she's right. I've got to do this now. This is the only way." And it's like amazing bit of just. However, that the best bit, probably one of my favorite parts of the film, comes later. He arrives back, and he has this bundle, this again a head. Yeah, you brought the head of this person I want killed. And Lady Carday's like, "I'm very glad you did it so quickly. I appreciate your service." Da da da.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yes,
I properly salted it so it wouldn't go off in travel."
Yes, that's right.
Like, fantastic, great. I really want to see this head.
Yeah, I put loads of salt, because that's what she advises him when she's telling him to do it.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, okay, I'll go and do it. And it's like he places it there. He's very happy. And she reveals, and she flings it kind of across the room and says, "What the hell is this?" And is it a cat or a dog or no fox? Fox.
Yeah, so like a porcelain fox's head is.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, what's happened there? I didn't realize, but Lady Sue has turned into a fox. Some women in history can change shape and have known to change into things. So very strange, very weird." And it's
lovely back and forth, because she's like, "Oh really? Is that really what happened?" "Yeah, it must be because it's here."
Yeah.
It has to be.
"I definitely did it. It's here. It's got the salt in it." And it's like, I will say this about Throne of Blood: there's not as much humor. Like really good humor in Throne of Blood as compared to Ron. And this is like this is a moment where I was laughing out loud. I thought it was hilarious. And he's like, "Yeah, well, that is what you do. That is
what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do here?"
And he's just such a great little scene, and he's fantastic, and that just brings even more kind of legitimacy to when he beheads Lady Carday later. He's like, "You have ruined everything. You have turned this. I think he says you've ruined the Ichimonji dynasty, or the family, or the household.
Everything is destroyed. Everyone's dead, and it's all you."
And then
she just goes, "Yep, that's exactly what I wanted to do." And he's like I said, he's absolutely furious by it, and
instantly beheads her, and then and I don't know what it is about like Japanese media, but everyone seems to be like every human seems to be like a high pressure bag of blood when they get when they get arms cut off or the heads cut off, because that blood, and I'm so glad this was in color, because that moment when her head comes off and the blood sprays all across the wall is probably one of the best shots I've ever seen in cinema. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a really good shot, because it's obviously, it's not done with any major effects. It's literally, obviously there must be like some kind of cannon sat behind her. It's it's a wide angle shot, isn't it? I say a wide angle of a room. Basically, you follow them in as they burst through this room, and she's just there, and the camera is fixated like on her the entire time. And when she basically says, oh, "This is everything I wanted to achieve. I don't care. I'm done," and the camera sort of like lifts up, doesn't it, to catch his head, unsheathes this sword, and cuts her down in one movement, and you get that wonderful spray at the back. I think there's a really good thing. I noticed it where there's another actor basically, and he shifts to cover her. So obviously she obviously ducks at that point, but he shifts to cover her, but he does it in a way he's like almost trying to stop him from beheading her. So it's really well done. It's really well shot, really well planned, because it's one single take. Obviously it's not a long take, but it's one single take where they go in, she says this, and he absolutely fucking loses it and cuts her head off in one go, and then you see him put it back in, and then they walk out, and he's just got that wonderful spray up the wall. But obviously you can see where the influences for like Kill Bill and things like that have come from, purely because it's such a dramatic spray on this clear white wall, obviously done for that effect. There's no way of completely misconstruing the fact that she is completely dead.
Yes, true. It's just so well done. You wanted to talk about a sequence you said about an hour in, which I think again is one of the most beautiful sequences in the film.
It ties into basically what we're saying about like the brutality of the violence. So like in that scene where there's that clear blood spray up the wall, and basically it's when he's at the second castle, isn't it? These two armies come in and just completely ruin everything and kill everyone, literally everyone. They burn this entire castle as well. I think
it might be the third castle, because I don't think Saburo is he?
No, sorry, the third one. Sorry,
because Jiro's in the second one. But again, I forgive you, because it is fairly. There's a lot going on. It's fairly complex as a film. But because they're not there, they arrive and they're like, "Well, you've banished Saburo, so we want nothing to do with you. You can have the castle. We don't care. We're going to go be with our master." So they leave. So then all of Hideyotora's men have free reign of the castle, and then that's when it gets attacked. Yeah,
I mean, it's literally. It's like a siege battle in the extreme, and there's clearly been no expense spared on it. There's fire arrows, there's people being cut down left, right, and center. There's hundreds of horsemen, absolutely hundreds of horsemen, hundreds of extras. And it starts where, he can hear all this commotion. Hideyotora can hear all this commotion outside, can't he? And he comes out, and there's one guard who's literally just been peppered with arrows, which I love. He's just there going, "Oh, they came out of nowhere." And he's just stood there, and this poor guy is just riddled with arrows, and then he slowly dies. And obviously Hideyotora runs away to try and, hide. And it cuts. There's no more sound effects or anything. There's no more screaming or shouting. It's just pure music. And against this backdrop of like this epic score, you just see all this carnage unfold, and it is literal carnage. I mean, it takes. This film has a little bit of difference to it because of some of the soldiers have rifles, so you've got to that stage where obviously they're using rifles as well as bow and arrows. So you get this weird sort of like combination of arrows flying across the the landscape, and the smoke from all these rifles going off, and then you've got this rush of color, this rush of red and like brilliant oranges with the fire and everything. It's absolutely insane. I mean, I played it back about 4 times just so I could see, because it cuts. There's a lot of cuts in it, just to ramp up sort of like the actual madness of everything,
chaos of everything.
Yeah, it does kind of come out of nowhere as well. There's no real sort of major build up to it other than like what's happened in the previous 2 places that he's been to. Obviously he's losing favor with everyone, and it does just kind of happen out of nowhere. And I think that's what threw me off. I was so shocked, like how brutal it all of a sudden became.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean the title roughly translates as either chaos, revolt, uprising, rebellion, confused, or disturbed.
Yeah, all of them summing up, especially that because they're obviously revolting against sort of like Hiratora and basically saying we can't carry on like this. It's not right. He doesn't know what he's doing. Let's take him out and force him to perform, the ancient rites and make him kill himself. But they literally they don't hold back. I mean, this whole sequence is basically you follow Hiratora around this castle as people are being killed left, right, and center. And he walks into one room, and there's two obviously female concubines that are in this room, and they both kill each other. And he's just stood there, and then he runs away, and then a load of other concubines are running with him. And as he's trying to get upstairs, they turn around as these soldiers come through, and these soldiers basically they form a human shield against these soldiers, and they all get rifled out. Absolutely insane.
Again, they're following the Lord because he still has. They see him as still having his powers, even though he's kind of signed them away. And he runs up the stairs, and this is the bit that's like probably the most heartbreaking bit is that he's trying to kill himself, but he's
lost his sword.
He's lost his sword, and he can't find a sword.
He broke it, didn't he? He broke his sword or something.
I think he goes to fight with somebody or something. It breaks and he's trying to find it, and he goes for his belt, and it's not there. Then he's looking for all these soldiers with any swords, and then he just kind of just fucking sits down and accepts it.
It's a great shot because he's at the top of this castle, obviously, and like again, it keeps cutting to outside where everyone's being massacred. You see people some soldiers where they've lost an arm. There's one guy wandering around at one point with an arrow in his eye. There's horses like falling over and things like that. There's so much going on in this shot. That's why I put it back a few times because there's so much going on. And again, there's no sound effects. There's no dialogue. It's all just pure music. And there's that wonderful shot when it's a couple of seconds and you see him. The castle's on fire, and then it cuts to him in this room at the top, and he's completely despondent. He's just sat in a heap. As fire's building up around him, a couple of arrows fling past his head and hit a wall sat right next to him. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful shot. Cool. And that's my favorite sequence in the film, purely because I didn't expect it, and at the same time because of how incredibly well done it is. I mean, they used multiple cameras for that sequence, from what I researched on it, and basically just let it all unfold. And obviously they did different shots when they're inside the castle and whatever, but the main outdoor sequences were all just done in real time. It was get it filmed, we'll use different cameras, we'll pick up whatever we pick up and use that, because you do see people falling over. There's a wonderful shot where there's extras running down a hillside. Obviously one of these armies is breached through, and I saw it. There's an extra who falls over and rolls about 6 times down this hill, and everyone else is just running away from him and they don't care. And you see him get up and he's like, oh. Really, really funny.
Yeah, I really quite like the shot where he's basically, I think at that moment he goes mad for me. I think that is the moment that's it for him. His mind is just gone because of everything. He's lost everything. This is it. It's all he has left. And he's just walking down the stairs, and he's got that almost blank expression on his face, or like that confused expression on his face. And all the soldiers just let him pass because they're just like, he's a broken man. He's,
he comes down those long, steep stairs, doesn't he? And he walks through the courtyard. It's like the courtyard is all like black and scorched and everything. And he's just wandering through. As both of these armies just split down the courtyard. And he just walks through the main gate, stops, sort of like confusedly looks around, and then peels off. Yeah, and it's brilliant because nobody knows what to do, because obviously this is the Lord, and they all expected him to perform seppuku, and he hasn't done it. So they're all like, "Well, what do we do? What do we do? We can't just kill him outright because that's not the way we do things. So what do we do?" And then they just go, "Let him go. He's not that person anymore. Let him go."
Yeah, it's kind of just got to let it go. And then the only survivors really is him and the jester, Kayami. But what I love about Kayami is all the way through the film, he's seeing all these awful things happen, and he's making fun of his lord. He's making fun of other people. He's taking it, he's taking it quite well. He's like, I'm a jester. I've got to do my job. It doesn't matter what's happening. I've still got to make people laugh. And towards the end, like after they meet Lady Sue's, I think it's Suriyama, who's blind. Hideatora's only getting more mad and more like, what's going on? And even the jokes aren't landing for him because he's mad. And he's like, even the mad in a mad world are actually the sane ones, that kind of thing. And it's brilliant. But I love when he breaks and he finally he's like, there's nothing funny about this. This is just tragedy. This tragedy does have links with comedy, but this is just pure tragedy. I hate the man, can't stand him. And there's that sequence from Lear where he makes that leap, a leap off that cliff, and then he's not actually on a cliff when he's blind. There's not that he's not blind in this film, but in that moment he does it voluntarily. He doesn't say, "Oh, you can," here's your cliff. He just goes. Yeah. He's like, you might as well kill yourself, and he's like, all right then, way. He just jumps off the cliff, and he's like, oh my god, he actually jumped. But I love that his arc is just like. It's all gone to shit. Like it is a pure, unadulterated tragedy. The whole thing.
Literally, everybody suffers in this film.
Even at the end, when Saburo finally comes in, he's trying to find his father. That's his first thing. He's like, I've got to find my father. I've got to protect my father. And he does do it. And they're riding off on the horse back together. And he finds him and he doesn't really recognize him. And he's like, it's me, your son. He's like, what, father? Why are you calling me father? What does that mean? And eventually he's like, Saburo, I recognize you, my son. Yes. Yeah. And they're on that lovely horse. They've won the battle. They're on the horse ride together. They're off on the way, and it's like, you know what? We're gonna have a good sit down, father and son. We're having a great chat, you and me.
Yeah.
You've proven me proud. And then Saburo gets a fucking arrow and dies. And then he's like, people think he's too mad to tell when someone's dead, and he's like, I can tell when someone is dead. There's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and then Hideatora just dies of a broken heart because his son. Yeah. His last hope, his last, vestige of who he was and the power he had is gone, dead in front of him in proper shocking kind of like, it's definitely one of those more shocking deaths in film. Yeah. You're not expecting it. It comes out of absolutely nowhere. And then the soldiers come back and like, we won. Yes, we won. And I went, oh shit, he's dead.
Yeah. It was a Pyrrhic victory. Nobody won.
And the most probably, it's all tragic, but this is the most tragic bit. Lady Sue was trying to escape her assassin, and she goes back to get the blind guy's flute because that's all he has in his life.
Yeah.
She does get assassinated, but she says to the blind guy, her blind brother, to stay there. Don't move. I'll be right back. And then at the end of the film, he's left on top of this castle alone, not knowing where to go.
Castle wall that he nearly fell off as well. And he's like,
he almost falls off, and he's just left there, and he doesn't know if his sister's going to come back. He doesn't know the outcome of the battle.
Wonderful little shot where he drops that scroll that he has in his possession. It's like
Buddha, the little Buddha scroll.
Yeah, and it's like, all hope has literally evaporated. No one is getting out of this film.
No, it's truly, truly tragic. Speaking of tragic, let's talk about Akira Kurosawa's life, because he said when making this film, this is towards the end of his life. He did make a few more films after this. But this was
nothing as epic as this, though.
No, this was his last epic. This was his last big kind of hurrah before the end. He did get before he died, he did get an honorary Oscar, Lifetime Achievement Oscar in 1990, which I think it was Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas, I think, handed it over. And they previously funded his last film, which he considered his dress rehearsal for this, Kagemusha, because obviously he was struggling and stuff. So on this film, he had pretty much entirely lost his sight. To think that he made such a beautiful film while almost being blind is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that says it all, really, doesn't it? I mean, literally, there's, again, every single shot is absolutely perfect. The way it looks, the coloring of it. I mean, it's almost overly done. It fits, it works, and the film is better for it as well.
he was mostly helped by his assistants who would make storyboards, but he also painted storyboards himself.
For years before making it.
Yeah, and if you can find them, if you can find the image of them, they are gorgeous, full of color, beautiful bits of artwork. But they look exactly like the film, like it's the same. And again, I think it's amazing. He also said of the film that he felt like Lord Hideyotora. He felt like King Lear his entire life. You know, he was kind of considered old-fashioned towards the end of
the
60s, I think. And there was all these young filmmakers trying to step on his corpse to get to the top, saying, "Yeah, he's shit, he's rubbish. You know, don't listen to him." Which is not unlike, again, the story here. And it got so bad that he actually attempted to commit suicide as well. He slit his wrists and, you know, hoped he would die, but he didn't, and, you know, he survived. And it was only later in his life when he was really being appreciated, probably around this time, around Kagemusha and into the 80s, really. The 70s kind of was like a low point for him.
Yeah, he had a load of box office flops, and he created a production company that was bankrupted after one film because it did that badly.
Wow.
Basically, it just completely decimated the film. And not only that, but like prior to making this, he was hired for the war movie Tora Tora Tora, and basically he was fired off that over creative differences. With this, you know, with Ran, with like the storyboards and everything, he wanted everything specific, and basically that wasn't really the film for it. Horribly enough, I mean, Tora 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 is a great film, but you know, you got to wonder what the Kurosawa vision would have been for that. During the production of this film, though, as well, his misfortune didn't really sort of end, did it? I mean, I've got one up here. Basically, like his wife died during the production of the film, and he only stopped filming for one day. He only mourned for one day, and then his recording engineer, his longtime recording engineer, like died late into production as well. It's just constant misfortune.
Yeah.
But then that adds to, you know, the perfection of this film. You know, it meant everything to him, and you can see it. You can feel it. You can almost taste it, like the perfection in this film. I mean, it is regarded. This film, I think, is regarded probably higher than Throne of Blood. Yeah. You know, from the critical standpoint and commercial standpoint, obviously as well. This was like one of the biggest films in Japanese history at one point. I mean, it was that big. It was that well renowned, not just in Japan, but it made that transference over to Western cinema as well, and was just so widely regarded. I think Roger Ebert absolutely loved it as well. You know, the legendary film critic, and I think that's a wonderful sort of, like, you know, he's gone through all this strife and all these problems, all these horrible moments in his life, and then he's still been able to create something like this, which, you know, it's a perfect piece of cinema. Even though it does have those moments that, you know, where it doesn't quite work in some places, it's still a perfect piece of honest, epic filmmaking that you don't get anymore. You don't get a film like this anymore. No. You'll never see a film like this anymore. No. You know, you could say that maybe Lord of the Rings, you know, with the amount of things that Peter Jackson put into it, you know, the effort, the sheer fact that they filmed back to back every single one of them and things like that. But you still, you know, it's still not this. It's still not this where the heart and soul is in it. Like you said, he saw himself in Hideyotora, you know, all the pain and the suffering and the ridicule that he got, unnecessary ridicule, ridiculous ridicule from all these upstart filmmakers. I mean, who the fuck did they think they were, to be quite honest? I mean, it's like if I made a film and with like space wizards and said, oh, it's fucking George Lucas can't make anything like this, you know, he's a washed up hack.
Yeah.
These guys were probably inspired by fucking Kurosawa, and then they had the balls to, you know, say, oh, he's washed up. Rubbish.
Utter crap. Yeah, he's it's interesting, like his point of view. He was quite a pessimistic person, really.
Yeah. I mean,
like, which is Yeah, which is quite strange to see this much passion and technical expertise put on screen, and then still be quite like, life is a bit shit, isn't it? Like he was really after living through kind of Hiroshima. He had quite a pessimistic worldview on war, nuclear warfare. He thought towards the end of life he was like, for all the technological advancements of the 20th century, all we've done is found better ways to kill each other. And I think that does color his films. I can definitely, especially in Ron, I can definitely see that kind of that pessimism more so than Throne of Blood. But it's still there's a little bit of that peppered in there. But I think by the time he'd gotten to this point, he was probably quite kind of jaded with the world and stuff. But again, created an absolute masterpiece with this film. But yeah. So I think the time has come, sir, for us to make some decisions. So as per usual, we like to categorize. We like to compare on 5 different categories and see how the 2 films compare. So first off, it's going to be writing. Which film do you think is better written?
Okay, interesting.
I think this is going to be a tough one again, yet again.
I mean, just in terms of obviously making King Lear work, I think I noted that in my research that he was concerned that these characters didn't have a past. It didn't seem like they existed before the play started. So for the film, he wanted to create this, this idea of the dynasty, which is why he made Hidatora so, violent and cruel. So it gives him a past with which everything that transpires can be built off. Like, because King Lear just throws you in, and you're like, oh, okay, everybody hates him. Why? It doesn't really give you that much. Which is why they play to the fool aspect of it in the play, because there's nothing really, to suggest otherwise, other than you love me, don't you? You love me? No, get the fuck out. Like you said before. I think for that, because it gave that backstory to the characters, that history that never happened, if you like, very, very Star Warsy. I think I probably lean more towards Ran personally. Ran fucking ran out of window. I'd lean more towards Ran, I think. But then again, I really, really like the subtleties in the way everything's scripted and paced, and the dialogue, obviously, in Throne of Blood, because they work the silence better in Throne of Blood because of the scripting than they do in Ran. Fucking hell.
It's tricky. It's tricky. I will say this about the writing for Throne of Blood is it is Macbeth. Like there's not many real changes, dramatic changes. Like you still you have the battle. It's beat for beat. It is pretty much Macbeth, I think.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
But like you said, Ron is a different beast, and like you said, he felt, all respect to William Shakespeare, but he felt that it wasn't as good as it possibly. The idea was better than perhaps the execution or the writing of it. And if he played around with something, combined characters, excise plots and things, maybe he could make it better. And I think I could make Macbeth I think it's purely a setting change more so than anything else. I think it's gone, okay, but Japanese samurai. So I could do the same thing. I could go, Macbeth, but set in the Viking age and do it about Vikings. I think it's almost as cut and dry as it can be, with small changes, still very good, still excellent. But I think your point is excellent about Ran. So I'm gonna give it to Ran as well. You said
my leg there.
Yeah, it's tough, but yeah, I think Ran is it works better though. Again, there's a lot of characters and stuff, and I think he's done the best he could with the story and with the length and the arcs and stuff.
Because Throne of Blood does the mysticism and the horror really, really well, and it doesn't need to say very much. You don't need to change very much in it, because obviously Macbeth is really good in the mysticism and the horror as well. So Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Next. Okay, so I'm glad we came to a decision fairly quickly on that one. So next up is acting. Which film had the better actors?
Oh, again, I really, really loved the performances in Throne of Blood. Again, it's just for that theatrical performance. I think I'm swinging more to Throne of Blood on this, purely because of that, because it is, you get to see the full decay of his mind, the paranoia. You get to see, obviously, the Lady Macbeth aspect, where she switches from quite demure figure to somebody who is in full control and is very capable of manipulating her husband and everybody else around. But again, Lady Carde in this is it. This is tricky. Lady Carde in Ran, brilliant. And that last sequence where she's just sat in that room and they all burst in. And yeah, I did this, and I don't care. I got what I wanted to. I achieved what I wanted to achieve. Sucks to be all you. It's difficult.
It's a tough one. There is some great performance. Hideo Tora is great in Ran, and Lady Carde, I think, are the really standout performances for me. But I think it's because you spend the most time with them.
Yeah.
So you get to savor that performance. You get to appreciate that performance. And like Throne of Blood, you are spending more time with these characters, so you get to see that degradation of the mind and them going through all that. So again, it's kind of Hideo Tora, Lady Carde versus Asagi and Washizu. It really is, because they're both the same characters effectively within this. Arguably, the film Ran, the film itself is longer, but you're spending a lot of time with all the tertiary characters as well.
Yeah.
So I think just based on the focus and the kind of the tunnel vision of Throne of Blood, I'm going to give it to Throne of Blood, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I probably, I think I'd give it to Throne of Blood purely because of those moments when, like the banquet scene, that performance is great. They're screaming at nothing. Everybody else has just sat around him. It's very, very powerful. It's very, very powerful performance in Throne of Blood. Like we said earlier, when he kills the guard, it's all measured. It's very much precise. The essence of sort of like the samurai. It's very much like you would see on a painting. His performance, the way he looks when he commits to the thrust to kill the guard.
Very expressive. The whole thing.
All expressive. I mean, it's expressive in Ran as well, but here, because obviously the saturation of the black and white and everything, I think it's ramped up that little bit more, him personally.
Yeah.
I think he's so much into it. He is that character. He is that character, that shadow of a doubt. Yeah. So I think I'm
Throne of Blood.
That little tiny bit.
These are all very, very close as well. These decisions are they're on a knife's edge, a razor's edge to make these decisions, because they are both just excellent. And I recommend people see both and make their own decision, before or after this discussion. Right, next one, music. So this is a tricky one, I think. They're all tricky, but this is particularly tricky for me because of the lack of music in certain scenes and the lack of music, which we've already discussed. But for me, I think, I'll be honest, I'm struggling to recall the music from Throne of Blood.
I was going to say, it is very much more fluty and wispy, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, interesting fact about Throne of Blood, the composer had a week to make the composition.
Yeah.
So We'll give him that.
Right.
We'll give him that. So, but I think like you were saying, with that big sequence with Hideo Tora coming down the steps, trying to kill himself, the whole battle at the third castle, that was, the music was perfect for that. It was booming. It was so effective. And again, I think there's more sequences in Ran where I remember the music, or at least, can hear it, or I go, oh, okay, it was a little bit like this. Again, I'm still struggling to remember the music because it was so little throughout both films.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is that sequence where there is no sound effect. at that hour mark, I mean, if you're not going to watch the film, if you're questioning why you should watch the film, I'd say put yourself at that hour point and then go back to the beginning and watch it right the way through, because that hour point is where the music is at its peak for me.
Yeah.
Along with everything else going in the scene, I think it's perfectly shot and it's perfectly designed. I'm so glad they cut out sound effects and screaming and shouting and dialogue, because the music is that's what I mean in terms of like the great epic. Don't need any sound effects. You know, these old Western films we've talked about before, like Once Upon a Time in the West. That film, there are long sequences in that film where it's just external wide shots of the great American landscape and Ennio Morricone's soundtrack, nothing else. There's a good 10-minute sequence where Jill's going from the train station to the ranch at the beginning of the film, where it's just music and landscape. Brilliant.
That's all you need. That's all you need.
If you've done your job with creating the scene, creating the film, creating the atmosphere of the film, you don't need to say anything. Which is my big criticism of modern films. Like I said with Godzilla versus Kong, they say too much because they haven't fucking done the job in the film. All the fighting's great, but they haven't done anything else in the film to warrant anything else happening. So with this film, it literally, the action does its talking by virtue of no effects, just music and what's happening on screen. And the guy who did the music for this, he didn't actually think it was going to work. He tried to leave the film. Toru Takamitsu, he tried to leave the film. And basically the producers were like, no, you can't leave. We don't want you to leave. You need to come back and finish this. And basically went, fine, but I don't think it's going to work. But, what do I know? It might turn out great. And for me, it did. It absolutely does. I mean,
there you go.
This one for me is the only surefire answer I can give you probably in this. The music in Ran is the better one.
Yeah, I agree. So that's 2 points to Ran and 1 to Throne of Blood so far.
Ooh.
So we've got 2 more categories. We have next is cinematography. So these are 2 very, very beautiful films, one in color, one in black and white. Again, one had a better budget and the other had a lesser budget. But which do you think looks better?
Well, just going off Throne of Blood, obviously it was filmed in the early 50s, late 50s rather. Sorry, beg your pardon. And just because it's black and white doesn't mean the cinematography isn't great. Because the cinematography is fucking great, like we said about that sequence with the spirit in the woods, where they do that wonderful shot where they follow them through, and then they turn back and the cottage has vanished, and the camera the shots continued running. Brilliant design, brilliant setup, and that's what cinematography is. It's creating the scene effectively. And obviously that's a very theatrical thing. You see that in theatre all the time, where the set moves and you don't even notice it. Even though you are in a theatre and you can see guys moving it, you don't notice it because they created the scene perfectly around it. And that's what happens here. And there are some wonderful shots, like the courtyard shots in Throne of Blood. Like I said, the banquet scene, which is perfectly staged to be just off the shoulder of individuals, or to be to show the length of the room. But just in terms of, again, the sprawling epicness of Ran, some of those shots of the rolling hills, especially at the beginning of the film, where they're having, they're in that sort of staging area where they've created where all the suns are going to come and all that. They do the hunt and everything. And the coloring against that backdrop, all the primary colors, like we said before, everything pops. Everything pops when you see it. It all looks beautiful. And I think for me, purely because of that, purely because the coloration and how well it works with every single established shot, I think Ran just takes it.
I think you're correct. They're both are beautiful, no matter how much they were funded or not. They're both gorgeous.
Funding doesn't really mean anything.
No.
For me, the first Evil Dead film is a brilliant film. It's a masterpiece. That had no frigging money, to the point where they essentially remade it with Evil Dead 2 as a pseudo sequel, kind of remake. The money doesn't mean anything if you know what you're doing. So in that film, there's some wonderful shots. The shots of on the ground and everything.
Yeah, they had it on a plank. They had their camera on a plank.
That's brilliant cinematography, because they're creating they're figuring out how to make that shot. And obviously with Throne of Blood, it's figured out how to make certain shots work in the limited budget, in the limited frames that they had.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
It is difficult. I'm actually pondering myself now.
Because like Throne of Blood is like, we get the fog. I love the fog. I love the dark forest. Yeah. I love the castles. Again, they're not as grand or as epic as the castles in Ran, but it's still good.
That theatrical element that works well with the filmmaking.
Yeah,
this whole theatrical element.
The black and white is really effective in. I think there was only that one scene with the blood on the bloodstained room that I wanted in color. That the rest of it was fine as it was. It's the atmosphere, the eeriness, the disconcerting element. But we do spend a lot of time inside the castles.
Yeah.
So it's mostly just kind of white and black walls. As good as the shots on the outside are, I have to agree with you. I think I've got to give it to Ron. Just for, like you said, sweeping epic. The colors are, like you said, pop every moment, constantly popping, amazing. I've got to give it to Ron. I think
it's that shot. It's that courtyard shot in Ran where basically we're outside the gate, so we're looking in at the gate. And the two armies are split on either side. You've got the castle burning in the background, and you can see the full height of the castle. Nothing's cut out. You've got the full height of the castle. You've got all this length of the courtyard, and he's coming towards you so slowly. And then he just peels off to the left of the screen and leaves. And you still get everything there. Like that's the shot. That's the moneymaker shot for me. I think in terms of the cinematography, it's like literally just went camera here, sit it here. Get all that, focus in on every single bit of color because you've got the black earth, and you've got all the color of the armor, and then you've got the burning in the background and that thick black smoke that's rising from behind it as well. It's a brilliant shot, and you've got him just all in white, like a ghoul. He just becomes a ghoul essentially, doesn't he? And then he just roams away. It's brilliant. The coloring works. Sorry, but the cinematography works because of the coloring. I think it just makes everything seem mystical, mythical.
Yeah, and it's almost like you said. He's almost like he's a dead man, isn't he? He's effectively died. That's why he's so ethereal and so ghost-like. Is because his life is over. He's gone mad because he can't kill himself. So he's effectively a living dead man, if you will. But yeah, I agree. So that's why. Yeah. Ran it is. So that's is that 3 to Ran, 1 to
3-1.
Okay, so let's go on to the last one, direction. Obviously, it's the same director, but obviously his eyesight was a bit better back in 57 and not in 85. So what do you think had the better direction?
I mean, again, it's like picking
your two favorite kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think that analogy is pretty much sums it up there. I think,
but much like Hideo Tora.
yeah. It's difficult because every single moment in Throne of Blood is directed perfectly towards the performers. Obviously, because the setting isn't really all that extravagant. There's nothing really that gives away any all the externals are covered by fog or trees and things like that, so there's not really much to give away in terms of like the external shots. And obviously Ran is the complete opposite of that. It is so wide open and very much like a western in that regard. It's all about the externals. It's difficult. I am leaning more towards Throne of Blood because it is tighter, it's compacter, and it's gifted more towards the actors in that regard. The other, like I said, the other end is that it's
Ran is kind of more the kind of the visuals and the outside and the showing off of Japan and Mount Fuji and wherever they filmed. But yeah, like you said,
they filmed Throne of Blood on Mount Fuji as well. But you wouldn't get that without knowing, if you like. It's difficult.
Just because, like you said, of the focus and the compactness, and again talking about all these kind of tertiary characters, all these kind of lots of plots and stuff going on. I like the focus and the intention and again, it goes along with what we said about the acting. I think for me, they put the perfect kind of pin in it, and you are hooked. You are hooked to the story. Again, it's a much smaller scale, but you are absolutely hooked in the performances, in the tension, in the drama, of the ambition, of the plot, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to get. It doesn't really matter, but I'm going to give it to Throne of Blood.
Yeah, I mean, whichever way we went here, it doesn't really affect either or. But yeah, I think I'd go with Throne of Blood as well, purely because of the dedication towards the acting. I think right. It's all about the acting in that film. It's all about the acting, all about the performance, and crafting something around those performances.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, let's think about it like health-wise. He was in his prime. Like, he was in his youth. He was in his prime when he directed this. Top of his game. And I think that shows. Again, there's nothing wrong with Ron. Ron is fantastic. It's well directed as well. But I think if you're looking for like focused, intense acting and storytelling and getting your point across and getting the characters across, the Throne of Blood is better in that regard. However, we have a winner. We have a winner, and they've run away with the competition.
Horrendous.
Because Ran has won this particular Clone Wars on the first episode of Samurai Month. What an epic discussion this was, much like Ran itself. It's been excellent, Andy. Thank you very much for this lengthy podcast.
It's been my pleasure as always, sir.
So, Andy, you have an excellent YouTube channel, Angry Andy Reviews. Everybody should go and check that out on YouTube. And where are you on the social medias? Where can they find you?
Well, I recently got Instagram as well. I'm doing so alongside of my YouTube channel, I do obviously movie reviews, and I do collectible unboxings as well, mainly for Star Wars related toys and products. So I've just got Instagram on there to do some toy photography. So you can find me on Instagram at angry_Andy1138. Obviously, I'm on Twitter at Andy_reviews. I think is right. I can't even remember my own handles at the minute, which is always good fun.
All right, I will tag them. You'll be tagged in them. Don't you worry.
Andy_review on Twitter, and obviously the main forum, the YouTube channel, Angry Andy Reviews. That's where everything's going. It's going all right. It's going fantastically well. I enjoyed your gorilla versus lizard. That one. Gorilla versus Lizard.
Gorilla versus Lizard. Go.
That'll be a B movie that's released later this year, won't it? Gorilla versus Lizard.
From Asylum or something. Roger Corman will have something to do with it, I'm sure. He just had his 95th birthday, I think, recently. So I'm sure he's the man who likes doing stuff on the cheap, which I appreciate. Well, for me, it's at Secret Balls on Facebook. It's at Dan_Balls on Twitter. Instagram, it's SpiderDan Secret Balls. And don't forget to use the hashtag #PrepareForPrattle when you interact with me. For everything else you need to know about the podcast, swing over to SpiderDanandthesecretballs.com on the World Wide Web to email me, read reviews, and learn how you can support the podcast. I've currently moved my podcast very recently from Podbean over to Anchor. So hopefully that's all gone very smoothly at this point, hopefully, when this is released. And there's not going to be any further problems with RSS feeds and any other of that bollocks. It's all done now, so it's done and dusted. I'm saving myself some money and putting it towards another thing, but it's all good. It's all good stuff. So I am safe. I've also got them backed up if anything goes wrong. So we're all good.
I mean, I've started doing that as well after a couple of
near misses.
Near misses. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I recommend. That's what kind of inspired me to do it, because I think you told me about another story similar, and then that happened to you, and I was like, right. I'm back in.
I accidentally. I've got this weird, horrible tendency where I instead of just deleting stuff to go into the recycle bin, I find the recycle bin redundant. So usually when I'm done with something, I am actually done with it completely. But in this instance, I multiply selected things and then accidentally selected something in that I didn't mean to delete, and I shift deleted, and it was gone completely.
Oh god,
gone completely. And
was it the Ewok? Was the Ewok?
Yeah, it was the Ewok film. I'd
Oh.
literally just edited it completely. It taken me a good couple of hours, and I was destroyed, absolutely destroyed. I watched it go as well. I click shift delete, and it was the last one to disappear off the screen. I went, oh no.
Oh
So, yeah.
dear.
But I still shift delete, but I make multiple copies and then
just in case.
put one in. So I've got 2 hard drives on my computer. So luckily I've got
them on both.
Space there. But Jesus, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So back your shit up, people. That's the lesson we've all learned.
That's the message of the podcast. Back your files up, boys and girls.
Back your files up and go watch some Akira Kurosawa, whichever the film may be. Any of his films that we've mentioned, or Rashomon or Hidden Fortress. Huge inspirations on things like Star Wars and westerns and all that. Yojimbo.
Definitely. We didn't even talk about that either, which is it just shows you how deep these films are. You can literally talk for hours about them. I mean, we probably should, but
well, we could always come back to it if people are interested. We can do more. We can do some more of these. We can compare a couple more, or whatever you fancy. But I'm sure I've got an idea for maybe including Yojimbo, maybe comparing that with something else potentially.
Yeah, I mean that's the other big one, isn't it? Other than Seven Samurai. Yeah,
maybe do something with that in the future, but we'll see. But before I go, I just want to speak about supporting the podcast and all the excellent people on Patreon that are doing it at the moment. So we've got I Am Jack's Musings, Paul Meller, Max Byrne, Tony Farina, and Scott Hodgson. Love all the interactions we have. I'm attempting to get everybody on the podcast at least once this year, so you all get your own episode. But thank you so much for giving as much as you can. I understand it's difficult times, but I do appreciate it. And I'm also going to I'm going to try and be a bit better on Patreon, because I often am not doing that much on it. So I'm looking to do YouTube videos that are unlisted, so that only you guys will have access to them. So I'm hoping once I get past all my computer issues, that maybe I can do some of those, and I think they'll be fun and enjoyable for you guys. So that is it. I hope you've enjoyed the first installment of Samurai Month. It has been a lot of fun getting to really deep dive into 2 excellent films for once, and not 2 awful ones. So that's a nice change of pace. But yeah,
until next time.
Until next time. Bye-bye.